Helen. How are
Helen,
you?
how are you?
Hiya, how you doing?
I'm
Yeah,
not too
good.
bad.
You?
How's things?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good. I'm glad you're
Enjoyed
good.
the weekend.
What would you like to talk to us about?
Unsurprisingly, I would like to talk about Dan Ticktum if that's okay with
Yeah, of
everybody.
course. Let's talk Dan. We all love talking Dan.
Oh,
Yeah, like I know I'm probably going to come across as a weird fangirl or something, but no, like genuinely, there's a few of us been talking about this online, and we are convinced there's something wrong with his car.
Yeah,
Like
but why would
from the
they do
start of the
that?
season,
It's
I
not in
don't.
the.
It's not deliberate, obviously, but I think we've been looking at things that have been going on since the start of the season. We've been listening to Dan's reactions on team radio, and we're really confused about what's going on. Like he doesn't seem to understand some of the decisions that the team are making. Um, they're going around changing things without telling him. Like they changed the ride height of the car and didn't tell him, and then he's suddenly going, "Why does the car feel like this? I didn't ask you to change anything." They're not putting tires on that he's asked for. There's just random setup changes that are being done that he hasn't asked for. Um, and when you've got things like 6 laps after the safety car, you somehow managed to lose 12 seconds when he's
Yeah, I
supposed to be
did see that on
saving
the driver
power.
tracker. Yeah.
It's there's something fundamentally wrong, and I don't know what it is, but neither do the team don't seem to know what's going on. His engineer sounds perpetually confused by the situation,
Yeah.
and Dan just has no idea what's happening half the time. He's trying to react to, braking in the same place. He can brake at the same place on 2 different laps, and the car does two totally different things.
Yeah. I feel.
I,
It's
I feel for
absolutely
I,
Dan.
bizarre.
I will say, if Nick is still watching this, Nick, that's what you need to do in Misano. You need
There
to
you
find
go.
out more.
Find out.
There you go.
Find out
That's
this little
that's your
conspiracy
little
theory.
mission from FEZ.
I think
Find out what's happening down at ERT.
I. For me, talking to Dan last year, right? I haven't spoken to Dan this year. Did ask to do an interview with him, but ERT didn't get back to me. But speaking to Dan last year, it was that I felt no. I'm not saying he lacks motivation. I'm not saying that. I think he lacks motivation at the moment. I think honestly, last season he knew he could drag something out of qualifying, and Sergio Sedecamera's done that. I suppose twice now this season. And he hasn't. And Dan was so good at doing that last season. And then he's like, well, I can get the car to there, but we can't stay there because of our energy problems. And it's kind of the same situation this year. And I feel for Dan because the 2 year cycle doesn't work for him. And I know there's a lot of talk about he's quick and he deserves a seat elsewhere. And I think from last season, yeah, for sure. If I was a new team, if I was someone who needed a driver, I would have looked at Dan, right? And I don't care too much about his antics and so forth. If he's quick, he's quick. But this season, I
And you know
worry for
what?
I worry
I
for
mean,
Dan because he's struggling this season, and if they do want to make a change, then if the car's no good next season, I don't know if he want to be in Formula E next year.
you, I mean, I get what you say, Jack. In terms of like, if you're looking at someone, especially from last season to this, you would look at Dan Ticktum. But we've all seen the unplugged footage. Yeah, the unplugged footage of Roger Griffiths saying what he thinks about Dan Ticktum. So,
Which I don't think's
I,
fair.
I yeah, no, I think that was a bit over the top, and we've heard a little bit of Ticktum's response to that. We can't broadcast that for multitude of reasons. But yeah, yeah. I think Dan quit, and yeah, I agree. Something potentially isn't right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pop in because your microphone's just a little bit iffy towards the end of the show.
Yeah.
Um, I, I'm not questioning Dan's motivation. Maybe that was a bit harsh from what I said earlier. I just think he knows every weekend, Helen, that it's going to be rubbish, effectively, to use a polite term. And I think that affects him. He wants to challenge, he wants to race, and because he knows it's rubbish, he's not getting on with it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, and I think if you know that you're in that sort of situation, it's got to be hard to keep the motivation high. Um, and I think his engineer does a good job of trying to keep him on that
Yeah,
track. But then the more that the weekend goes on, like FP1, everything was fine, quite calm. As the day sort of went on, and there was more and more things happening that weren't normal or that nobody could explain, that's when the frustration was setting in.
Yeah. All right. I have just a quick question. Because it comes into my mind now. I think Dan Ticktum, for me, he's Formula E is massive for him, and I don't think he can afford to drop out of Formula E. But if he drops out of Formula E, like where would he go as a fan? Like he'd probably end up in a GT3 series, racing in whatever the Blanchpan series is called now.
I reckon he could do WEC.
Yeah, he could find himself into WEC, but you go missing in WEC because you're part of a team of 3 drivers, and it's easy to just, I don't know, go missing and get forgotten about. Whereas in Formula E, it's you're right front and centre, you make the difference. And I think that's good for Dan. And I worry for Dan that if he was to leave Formula E, that not he'd find difficult, but I just think like he'd be like Mauro Engel, right? Mauro Engel used to race in Formula E Season 4, announced his retirement today from racing and to focus on rally, but he'd be kind of like a Mauro Engel, right? And he kind of just would fade. He raced in Blanchepont, but you kind of just like, ugh, if you know what I mean. Are you worried for Dan in that sense that, you know, his career might just take a downward spiral?
I'm curious to see how the 3.5 Evo goes, because I think that is going to be the breaking point, really. I think this season they're having to just accept that they're riding the rest of the season out. They're not really going to be able to change anything. What they've got now is just going to have to deal with it till the end of the season, as bad as it's going to be.
Yeah.
But if the 3.5 car comes in next season and there's not really any sort of improvement or any hope of an improvement, I really do worry about what's going to happen going forward. Not just to Dan, but generally to the team. I mean, they're a very small team.
Yeah.
And if they continue struggling like that, what's going to happen to the team?
Oh, well, I think for everyone it makes sense. I think for ERT to become a customer team, I think for them producing their own powertrain is
100%.
pointless. I think if they were to team up with a Jaguar or a Porsche or a Yamaha or yeah, I think ERT would be in better shape. I think if they were to not be a manufacturer, I think that would help them. Would you
Yeah,
agree?
I know they've managed to get a few sponsors and stuff on board, which is always promising. But I think long term, the fact that they're doing their own powertrains and they haven't really got anybody sharing data and they haven't got that kind of aspect of it as well, I think it is going to be more difficult. So if an opportunity came up for them to get a powertrain, become a customer of somebody else, even if it was Yamaha coming in from Lola, that's got to be a bonus. It's got to help them in the long term.
Yeah, 100%. Helen, we've got to let you go, but it was a fascinating conversation. We'll keep tracks on Dan Ticktum and do come back because I'm happy to talk Dan. I'm a big Dan supporter. I kind of want to, in terms of, I kind of want to break that tradition that he's this bad boy and he's just this person everybody hates, because I don't believe that notion for 1 second. Because speaking to him, he's a nice guy who just wants to win and wants to race, and yeah, he's a bit rough around the edges, but who isn't? You know, we've all got our sides and so forth. So, yeah, it'd be interesting, and I do hope for Dan's sake that he stays in. But thank you very much, Helen. We got one more.